The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all. This is another evening with yours truly, Rob McConnell, here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. If you would like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com on all media social networks, xzone at xzoneradiotv. If you would like to visit the X Zone Broadcast Network, where we have listings of all the shows that are available to you, 7/24, 365, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the X Zone TV channel on SimulTV, simultv.com, and then in the search engine, type in X Zone. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is Cynthia Sue Larson. She is the best-selling author of several books, including Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, and High Energy Money, who helps people find love, meaning, and prosperity by accessing worlds of possibility. Now, Cynthia has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, an MBA degree, a doctorate of divinity, and a second black belt in Kuk Sul Wan. And Cynthia is the host of Living the Quantum Dream on the Dream Visions 7 radio network. And joining me now is the one and only Cynthia Sue Larson. And welcome back to the X Zone, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's such a pleasure to be on the show with you.
Nice having you back with us again. For our listeners who may not have been with us the last time you joined us here in the X Zone, tell them a little bit about yourself and what started you on the crusade or the quest that you're on.
Well, the short version is that I've been fascinated by the true nature of reality, and then perhaps pursuant to that fascination, I've experienced some remarkable things that are now, I think, accepted as Mandella effects.
Right.
But back in the 1990s, when I was really starting my website and writing about this material, it was not the term. So I was pretty much, it's like on thin ice out there.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah. So now I've got a lot more company, people who are witnessing that we do appear to have alternate realities where some of the things that we observe could be physiological changes, changes in the Earth's geography and so forth.
Right.
For me personally, I was just with a couple of friends. We were walking by the Berkeley Marina, and there had been previously a wide, large open space that we would walk through together.
Yes.
And as I brought up the subject very cautiously about have they ever noticed things shifting with reality, suddenly all three of us noticed that there was a gigantic sundial concrete sculpture there that had been a gift from the sister city of Japan, supposedly. It looked like it had been there for decades, but we had never seen it before. So,
wow. Now, can you explain to us what the Mandela effect is?
Well, I'll try.
All right.
To be honest,
I know that's a deep question.
Yeah, if you want to go down the entire rabbit hole and ask what's why is it happening? That's conjecture right now. But as far as what is happening,
yes,
people are noticing, like Nelson Mandela is where the term Mandela effect came from, and a lot of people. Art Bell, in fact, on Coast to Coast, noticed from the number of calls he was getting that people really had remembered that Nelson Mandela had passed away. He died while incarcerated. So this was April 2001 that the phone was ringing off the hook, and Art Bell was getting a lot of calls about this. But it took a number of years before the term Mandela effect was actually coined to mean that something has changed, because we remember that Nelson Mandela died while incarcerated, for example. But then at that time, in 2001, 2008, 2009, 2010, he actually was very much alive at that time.
Okay, so let me just try and help our listeners understand. So reports were being the reported death of Nelson Mandela while he was in prison was being circulated, when in fact he was still alive. Is that it?
Well, that's close.
Okay.
You're getting there. What people remember is having seen TV newscasts on all of the major networks. They remember seeing the front page news on every country and continent on Earth, just reporting the news that Nelson Mandela has died. So it's not so much just that they have a vague recollection that maybe this happened, but
Right.
they actually remember, like, wow, look at the mess that's happening now with his widow, Winnie, dealing with all sorts of stuff, just trying to get the estate sorted out. They'll remember details,
Yes.
and that kind of thing. So it's even including people remembering that they learned when they were going to school that Nelson Mandela had died in jail. So there are all sorts of facets to this, but it's not necessarily that everybody in the world remembers that. So there are people that remember things just pretty much the way they actually match historical facts right now.
Okay, so how do we explain this? Where some people saw news reports of Nelson Mandela being dead, and other people have no recollection of the events occurring.
Right. Well, because I've been tracking this before the so-called Mandela effect situation came on the scene, I was actually tracking it in the 1990s, which was a few years before 2001 when Art Bell noticed it. So had a few years in on this, and my take on it, just put it out there from it's my point of view,
Sure.
is that it looks to me like we can expect to see these quantum behaviors, the very spooky action at a distance that Einstein called it, where there's entanglement and two particles can be separated across a great distance and still respond as if they're joined at the hip. So you make a measurement on one and you absolutely know what the other entangled particle is doing. You'll also experience quantum phenomena where you'll see a superposition of states, very much like Nelson Mandela alive or dead. You've heard of the Schrödinger cat experiment, and that was Erwin Schrödinger hypothetically putting a pretend cat, an imaginary cat, inside of a box with a vial of poison and having someone observe that cat. And inside the box, there's a very complex mechanism involving radioactive isotope that decays at some random rate that we don't know what that is. Therefore, this is the impossible situation that Erwin Schrödinger was pointing out. We are in this ridiculous situation, is what Erwin said, that the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. With the Mandela effect, we're actually witnessing people being alive again when we had seen reports that they had died.
Could those reports have just been the result of fake news?
Well, keep in mind this is before the term fake news came out. But of course, we've had yellow journalism, here in America.
Sure.
So I would say this is very different for those of us who have experienced it. It doesn't feel the same. Like I know what the so-called fake news is like, where there's a bias, there's a slant, and
or Facebook is filled with these false statements. And then in the earlier days, you had the National Enquirer, World Weekly News, that were making up stories that were sensationalistic just in order to sell copy. And didn't Nelson Mandela actually, when did he die? In 1999, I think?
A lot of people remember the 90s, but actually he lived past that. He lived past 2001. He lived past 2009, 2010. So he just died a few years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. He died in 2013, my producer just said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
But it becomes a little bit sketchy. So people will remember, like, he died in the 90s. Someone else will say, no, it was the 80s. And each of them have very clear anchor memories to describe why that's what they believe.
Interesting. You and I have to take our first break. Cynthia, please stand by. And Exonation, our guest this hour is Cynthia Sue Larson. We're talking about the Mandela effect, amongst other things. And if you'd like to find out more information about Cynthia, visit her website at www.realityshifters.com. That's www.realityshifters.com. Now, for all of you people out there who have been asking to see the entire series of In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, well, we did it. We were able to acquire the rights to the In Search of series with Leonard Nimoy, all 143 episodes. They will be played and broadcast around the world right here on the X-Zone TV channel. And if you'd like to find out more about the X-Zone TV channel, visit www.simultv.com. And then in the search engine, just type in X-Zone. Speaking about X-Zone, Cynthia Sue Larson and I will be back on the other side as we continue investigating the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Explanation. Cynthia Sue Larson is my guest this hour. Her website is realityshifters.com. Okay, Cynthia, are there other examples of the Mandela effect that you can share with us? And how does one know if they're actually experiencing the Mandela effect or not?
That's a good question. Well, as you mentioned at the introduction, I do martial arts. It's actually pronounced Kuk Sul Wan for anybody who's out there who practices this. That it looks like Kuk, but it's Kuk Sul Wan.
Okay. I apologize. I did not mean to.
That's okay.
Okay.
It's all good. So one thing that we know, if you do any kind of martial art, or even if you like the sport of boxing or something like that, people are keenly aware of, for example, the location of the kidneys. There's even a term, the kidney punch, which is well known. And if I were to ask you, show me where your kidneys are, show me where to avoid for the kidney punch, you know, most people would immediately be able to put their hands on their lower back, kind of the place you would place them if you're tired and you're going up a big hill and you want to take a break. So it's that location that we all know so well. That is no longer the location where our kidneys are situated. And that's true of all whatever 8 billion people on the planet there are. It seems like we've had an upgrade and our bodies no longer are configured in that way. That's one of many physiological changes that definitely a lot of us remember things used to be different. So when I ask a martial artist, where do you avoid punching or kicking too hard? Because we know that could lead to serious injury, possible fatality or death. They're usually quite surprised because they remember, like I do, kidneys used to be in the lower back. But now that's not the case. You don't need to be so cautious there. I mean, obviously you don't want to damage someone's spinal column or nerves, but no longer is it a case where you could whack the tender organs because the kidneys have relocated to a safer location.
How do we know this? How do we know this?
You can check it out. Check any anatomy text. Take a look at the current location of where the kidneys are. You'll see they've moved up. They're under the ribs. They're a little bit protected by the rib cage. And now for doctors to access, they need to go through the front, no longer through the back, the way some people remember they used to.
All right, I'm having a problem with this one because I've had kidney surgery.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
so this is amazing. So do you remember where would the scar be for that?
Well, the scar is in the back.
That would make sense for where they used to be. Now I'm curious. I think usually people's scars do stay the same, but if you go in and you get a checkup on your kidneys,
No, the
and they do
the scar has not moved. My wife is a nurse,
good.
and the scar has not moved. It is in the same place it was 2 years after the surgery.
Okay, the scars often stay there. What's interesting is that if you go in and they need to check on your kidneys now, what they do is they come in through the front now. They don't go in through the back.
How come this isn't well known?
I think it's going to be well known, but that's a really good question. Right now, a lot of people they just think this is ludicrous or they can't wrap their minds around it. It seems too bizarre to be true.
Is it possible that the location of the kidneys in some people are not where they are in the majority of people due to a genetic or an anatomical difference?
Well, you could account for some small changes that way, but this seems to be pretty dramatic and pretty global across the entire world.
Now, when you say global across the world, how do we know this?
From just like I've been publishing my newsletter, Reality Shifters, for 20 years, so I get reports from around the world. I've been a researcher collecting these firsthand reports, like you would do in biology, for example. So it's a kind of field science of a sort, like UFO reports. That's where we are with the Mandella effect right now. And my background in physics is such that when I look at these reports, I recognize some of the hallmarks of what we would witness within any area of quantum physics. And we're starting to see it pretty much anywhere we look in any other branch of science, whether it's evolution, we'll see evolutionary jumps. We'll see a lot of quantum behavior happening in biology. Definitely seeing that. So,
okay. My producers just checked something out on the web. And this is from a leading medical university, and they say the kidneys are a pair of bean-shaped organs on either side of your spine, below your ribs and behind your belly.
Okay. What you want to do is actually go into the doctor, and if you get a checkup, not that you need one, only do it if you need one.
Yeah.
But I've heard from reputable sources that they used to have doctors check them on the back, the lower back, and now that's not where they're approached because that's not the easy access point. It's definitely through the front. They're up higher toward the rib cage than they used to be.
But you said they're behind the rib cage.
They're slightly inside of it, so they've just kind of moved up and a little bit more protected, and the access point is now the front, not the back.
So what do you think is causing these changes?
I think this is the way nature works. So my premise is that we live in a remarkably unlikely universe. I like to look at it from the spiritual side. So to me, I take an optimistic view that we can see that this is the best of all possible worlds, and that as conscious observers, we're helping to make that so.
Would this account for all the different sightings of, let's say, Elvis Presley that people have had over the years?
It actually might be a contributing factor. Probably, I know it sounds crazy to say so. That's a funny example, but yeah, I couldn't rule that out. It's quite possible.
Would that also account for people who say that I know I put my keys here and they're gone now?
Absolutely, yes. And that's kind of where I came in on this topic
Right.
when I started my website, was noticing that objects that seem like they should not be moving around are definitely like teleporting around and not where you left them at all. They're in a totally different location.
Now, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a quantum physicist, but something that comes to mind that if something was moved at a molecular level, would that not change the entire area where the rift occurred? Why just the keys? Wouldn't there be an indentation in a table? Wouldn't there be some other evidence that there had been a rift in the very fabric of time and space? Because that's what would happen if there was a quantum shift. Yeah,
well, I guess that would be one possibility. But what I notice, these shifts in my daily life, they don't seem like that. I'll notice something different than I expected, but everything in that different moment seems relatively normal.
Okay.
So
What do we know about the physiology and psychology of people who are experiencing the Mandela effect?
Okay, a lot of people that are currently reporting the Mandela effect, if they take the Myers-Briggs Interest Inventory, which is a very simple test you can take online, it's basically it gives you a breakdown of your tendencies. And people that experience the Mandela effect, in the majority of the experiencers are what you would consider to be intuitive and feelers. So they tend to kind of reach out to their vision of the world is one that's very much based on intuition, much more than what you might call an analytical kind of a left brain approach, and the feeling side of things rather than thinking. It's not that they don't think.
Right.
It's just it's just that they're open to that intuitive side.
So would we call them, for a lack of better classification, New Agers?
Some people might say that.
Okay.
That I don't know that that's currently the term that's in vogue, but I think people really resonate with that.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, the grouping, and I didn't want to be negative, so I thought that would be a good example.
Right.
All right, so they're intuitive. They are. Could we say that they have the same approach to life that would be found in the new concept of spirituality that seems to be growing amongst the people?
That is a good fit, yes.
Yeah.
Although there also are some subgroups in the Mandela-affected community that are what you would call conspiracy theorists. And I would be remiss to not point out that some people believe that actually we might be living in a computer simulation. And you'll hear people like Elon Musk talk about that. But when you hear the Mandela-affected people talk about it, then they can kind of go into a sort of a, not necessarily a dark place, but once they're living it, then they can start feeling like, what's the point? Things are changing and I want my old Earth back, which I don't think that's a helpful mindset personally.
No, I agree with you.
But I can certainly understand why, because some people are saying we don't live in the same part of the Milky Way that we used to live in. We're in a different part of the universe, that the continents have changed. Our bodies are changing, not just the kidneys, but the heart and the skull. And lots of things are happening that seem very different.
It's called evolution.
Exactly.
All right, stand by, Cynthia. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Next Nation, our guest this hour is Cynthia Sue Larson. Her website is realityshifters.com. Once again, the X Chronicles newspaper is available with our compliments to one and all. All you have to do is go to www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. Each edition is a minimum of 92 full-color pages. And once again, to get your copy, you can download it, read it online, do whatever you'd like with it, but share it with people. There's some great articles in there. I shouldn't say some great articles. They're all great articles at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. I'm Rob McConnell. Cynthia Sue Larson and I return after this news break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Cynthia Sue Larson is my guest, www.realityshifters.com. It's a very interesting concept of the Mandela effect. But has this happened throughout history, or is this something that has just started to happen? And if so, when? When can we pinpoint the actual shift that people are noticing?
Well, a lot of people are looking to see when that shift might have happened, but I've been tracking this for over 20 years, and the best that I can see is, even though we didn't have the internet, we've always, or at least as long as we've had newspapers and journalism, we've had reports such as when Mark Twain said that the rumors of his death were greatly exaggerated. But
Right.
but that whole quote came about because there had been a newspaper editor who had actually heard a report that maybe Mark Twain had
Right.
passed away. And so and when I look at science, that's where it seems to, the story starts becoming quite clear. I mentioned evolution earlier on, but we're now witnessing very quantum behavior in all of nature, that in just a single generation, a species can evolve. That would be like a bacteria evolving on a petri dish so that it can digest the nutrient agar that it was given to eat, where originally it might be lactose intolerant, so it can't eat the milk-based product, that kind of thing. So we're definitely witnessing, thanks to our technology right now, we're getting a real view of the world through quantum eyes, also because quantum physics is making inroads into every single branch of science, which never was the case before. So we're starting to get an insight as to the observer's role in all of creation, that the way that we observe absolutely can make a difference in what we're seeing.
It seems that the word quantum is a buzzword these days. People seem to be using it to express something that cannot be explained. For example, in the last minute, you've used the word quantum 6 times.
Yes.
What is the mean? What to our listeners who are saying what's quantum? Quantum. They've heard about it, but describe what you mean when you say quantum.
Okay. It was a term that was created around 1900 when Max Planck, a physicist, was coming up with a word to describe the tiniest little building block of matter, so that we could conceptualize something so tiny that once we figured out what that was, we would have a clue as to how all of the rest of reality comes together. And that was a great idea. So a quantum particle then might be an electron. When you look at an atom, which is smaller than a molecule, the atom, we think of the atomic age, the age of the atom, and atom smashers would be the Large Hadron type colliders and so forth. But an atom has a nucleus, and it's got these electrons that buzz around, flying around on the outside. And an atom, although it's very material, and it's made of solid stuff, there's a lot of space. It's mostly empty space.
So it seems that an atom is much like our solar system.
It looks a little bit like that, but the only difference would be that if you could see Pluto gets a jolt of energy and then suddenly it's in a different orbit now.
Right.
Then you'd have something very similar. We don't usually notice our planets making a jump and suddenly being quite a ways farther from the sun, but we'll definitely see electrons do that.
You were saying earlier that there are those people who believe that the Mandella effect could be caused by our movement within the Milky Way.
Well, they're noticing that has changed, and that they remember that we used to be in one place and the sun looks different. Some people think that the sun used to be yellow and now it's white. They think the planet is smaller. So people who are quite upset about this really get a distinct feeling that this isn't even the same planet. It's not even the same part of the solar system, and they'll look for residue of these reality shifts, of these other realities, by looking at, for example, Carl Sagan's TV shows where he would talk about how we used to be in the Sagittarius arm, and it doesn't seem like we're there anymore. And he wouldn't make a mistake like that. So that's something that's happening thanks to the Mandela effect, is people, thanks to the internet also, the communities are coming up to talk about how they remember that things used to be very different.
Could it just be false memories?
That's one theory, and it seems like that's a pretty good theory, unless, for me, it's the physiological changes that really get to me, because that seems to indicate something has changed. Like the position of the heart also seems different to a lot of people. I remember if I wanted an accurate blood pressure reading, then I would offer my left arm, because the heart was, everybody knew it's slightly on the left side of the chest, not exactly in the center. Right now, it's pretty much exactly in the center
Yeah,
of our
right behind the
chest.
sternum.
Yeah. And I don't remember it being there. So, some people remember things differently. And for me, that's sort of mind-boggling.
Yeah, and as
So-
far as taking blood pressure, it depends on where your doctor wants to take the pressure, because the pressure is the same on both sides. If the pressure is high on one side, they'll check the other side. If they, and so on and so forth. Plus the pressure in the ankles as well.
That's true now. And I think it's very interesting, because I remember when that wasn't true. And why would I remember it that way?
Well, because maybe they didn't do it but like that back then.
Well, that's the weird thing about the so-called false memory. It's like, why would so many people remember the same bizarre thing? And I don't know that they were changing the way that they do it. I don't hear about changes in protocol. Like now we always come in the front for the kidneys. Like, why would that change like that? It's strange.
It's medical science advances, and so do surgical techniques. And as newer and better techniques are discovered where the stress isn't as hard on the patient, then the articles get written up and doctors follow it, because at the end of the day, a doctor wants to be able to help a patient and cause them at least the less pain possible during a surgical procedure, so that the recovery will be less painful and without a higher risk of infection. I've had the pleasure of working with the International Institute for Spinal Regeneration, and I know that over the past 20 years, there's been a lot of changes in spinal research and spinal surgery. And,
Absolutely.
So I'm sure that the way they did spinal surgery 20 years ago is a little different from the way they do it now.
Oh, it's definitely. One thing that reporters are noticing when they investigate the Mandela effect, and sometimes it's quite shocking, is that there will be one particular thing that gets them. Like one reporter noticed watching the James Bond film Moonraker, I think it was. There's a character named Dolly who he remembers clearly. She used to have braces in the scene that's quite pivotal in the movie, where she's talking to this, or looking at this character named Jaws, and he has a mouthful of teeth. He's a bad guy. You remember the guy?
Yeah, and she opens her mouth and she has braces or something as well. I remember that scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you look at the movie now, you'll see that she's never had braces. That was never part of the movie. There's no version of that with her having braces.
It could be a re-edit. That happens all the time. Look at what happened up here in Canada. Home Alone Christmas, when little guy goes into, Macaulay Culkin goes into the hotel and asks Donald Trump for directions.
Right?
That was cut out.
Wow.
So these things happen.
Well, and the reason I'm mentioning the journalists is because journalists, they dig deeper.
Not all of them.
Well, this guy for San Diego City Beat did. He went a lot deeper. He found out his own personal copy of Moonraker that he used to watch that had the braces.
Yeah.
No one's been in his basement. No one tampered with it. It's his own video, his own home thing. He played that, and it had changed.
I don't know what to say, but, to me that maybe he had an old copy. I don't know.
And it got weirder.
How much weirder can it get?
Oh, it got really weird, because then he noticed that a picture of his father was on the wall, and it was a completely different configuration. So it's like the photo itself, his family photo. So it's not something that everyone would know what his family photo looked like. But to him, it had always been a certain way, and now it was completely different.
That is strange. Was he the only one who noticed this family photo difference, or were other members of the family also saying, hey, what the heck happened to this picture? Where's Dad or where's Mom? They weren't doing that the last time we saw it.
Well, when he published the story, I think it was just him. Subsequently, I'm sure the whole family heard about it, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to follow up and find out.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if the family said, what are you talking about? The pictures, that's the way it's always been. Yeah,
Right.
Maybe he was wrong. Who knows? We've got to take our final break here, Cynthia. Please stand by. And Exonation, our guest this hour is Cynthia Sue Larson, www.realityshifters.com. Tell me, Exonation, are you a believer or are you a skeptic when it comes to the Mandela effect? Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and we'll publish the results where we usually do on the Xzone TV, xzoneradiotv.com website. Wow. The weekend is here already. I hope everyone has a great weekend, that, you all deserve to relax, spend time with the family, because during the week they've missed you, and it's always great to reconnect with those you love and those who love you. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with Cynthia Sue Larson from our broadcast center and studios in we're not in Hamilton anymore. We're in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. And we're back with Cynthia Sue Larson. We're talking about the Mandela effect this hour here in the X Zone. Her website is realityshifters.com. Cynthia, I understand that you were at a Mandela effect conference, and what were some of the topics that were covered there?
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, it was wonderful. We had the quantum businessman there talking about Gilligan's Island, and he interviewed his parents, talking about some family songs, John Denver songs that he remembered, and also some Mandanimals. These are Mandela-affected animals, such as beavers that just have remarkably orange teeth, for example, and giraffes that eat meat and that kind of thing. So that was one talk. All these are on YouTube, on Mandela Effect Conference channel on YouTube. Shane Robinson of Unbiased and on the Fence gave a remarkably excellent talk about changes in the maps, because he had actually sketched every continent on Earth and written the word love in all these languages, and noticed that they were completely shifted in some places. You could zoom in and see the changes. And then we had Lauren Cannell-Pavelka. She gave a very personal account of how the Mandela effect for her really is a miracle effect. And it can be life-changing, because if you've got a genetic predisposition toward a disease that's uncurable, like she does and her family does, then you can experience miraculous changes, which seem to be very much part of the Mandela effect. And then we also had Kimberly Lynn Hansen from Canada, an artist, an internationally famous artist, who brought a display of beautiful art that she'd created all about the Mandela effect and some of the messages that we can find in that art. And then the MC was known as Dark Wolf, Jerry Hicks, and he did a wonderful job of describing how right now in history, we'll probably be able to look back and see that right here in the year 2020, we're at the point where people used to be with the UFO phenomenon, where people made fun of them. But then now the governments of the world are coming forth and saying, we're patenting anti-grav technology and that kind of thing. So I think.
All right, I have to ask you, you were saying that something about beavers with orange teeth.
Yes.
Now, do they have orange teeth or they don't have orange teeth? I'm trying to understand which side of the coin this is on.
Well, what do you think? This is always interesting.
Well, I've seen beavers because we live up here in Canada. I've seen beavers because that have orange teeth, and I've also seen beavers with the regular kind of colored teeth, and I know for a fact that that it has something to do with the enamel on their teeth and iron and magnesium.
Yes, they've got actually metal in their teeth,
Right.
which gives the teeth an orange color.
Yeah.
And now they do have orange teeth. And some people don't remember that. They think that's definitely something different.
But yet it's not.
Like, and then also the other manned animal mentioned in the video on the YouTube channel had to do with giraffes eating meat, that they're carnivorous. And a lot of people had never heard of that.
But just because somebody doesn't hear about it, does that mean that it's part of the Mandela effect?
Well, it's mostly the Mandela effect is an interesting phenomenon because what we're looking for is something where we see a distinction, that there absolutely was a different history in place. And you're right when you point out maybe just because no one mentioned it, they didn't want to gross out the kids. But then you would have seen when you go to the zoo that there would be giraffes munching on meat. And now you can see that. And why didn't we ever notice that before?
Well, could it be that you just answered it because we never noticed it before, because it wasn't brought to our attention?
But why? That's the question.
Well, okay, let's say that you're on a safari, okay, and you're in Africa, and you see a giraffe licking a carcass. To you, that's not normal because you believe, based on what you've known so far, that giraffes don't eat meat. So if you were to see a giraffe licking meat, and giraffes have a very well-known habit of chewing bones. Now, this is a fact. It's a zoological fact that they chew bones. So if you didn't know that, you would think that this was strange and that, this has got to be something that is not normal. Unless you know all the facts, how can you make a claim that something isn't normal?
And the reason that these are not perhaps the best convincing arguments for an individual, I think you're making a good case for that. What matters is when you notice in your own life that you've seen something flip-flop or that there's something that you absolutely remember, and it's definitely different. So,
give me an example of that. Give me an example of something that a person that you've heard of has said, I know this for as an experience, my own personal experience. This is what happened. This is what it was.
Well, for myself, I used to do my laundry every day, or once a week at least. And when I was turning one of the dials, the knobs on the machine, suddenly it needed to be turned a different direction and a different amount. I had to actually stop, stare, and look at what was going on because I couldn't just use my muscle motor memory and start the dryer the way I'd always done before. It was completely different. And that's something that only I would notice. It's something only startling to me. So it's a personal kind of a reality shift, a personal Mandela effect.
I guess. With this lady who was talking at the conference, who had these what was it, a life-altering disease?
Yes, there are some genetic conditions that are pretty much lethal, and they can be passed along through families.
Right.
And so she's actually been on a journey to talk with all of the medical professionals because she wrote a book about it, Mandela Effect or Miracle Effect, 20 Reasons Why I Am the Wolf and You Are Too. And her doctors along the way, her nurses, her specialists, were amazed. And they started noticing that this Mandela Effect is real, partly because of their experience with her and also just noticing that this starts explaining a lot of otherwise totally inexplicable things, even in the realm of science.
Could the Mandela effect be a phrase that is used when people do not understand what they're seeing, and there could be a logical explanation for something that seems so illogical to people?
Yes, you can always use just regular classical logic and your analytical side of your mind to sort things through. Yeah. We did notice in some of the talks at the conference that we had in Idaho in November, both Shane Robinson pointed it out and so did Lauren Cannell-Pavelka, that there definitely is an intuitive aspect to this Mandela effect. And a lot of people do not naturally take to that intuitive approach toward life. But if you start moving more into the intuitive side of viewing the world, it's likely that you can start seeing, some of this kind of magic or miracle or Mandela effect.
Now, we know for a fact that certain conditions, environmental conditions, and I don't want to sound as if I'm trying to be nasty here or not. I'm not. I'm just trying to find an explanation. Affect the human psyche. Is it possible that the Mandela effect is actually being caused by environmental effects and not a Mandela effect?
Well, we might be able to suspect that would be a possibility, but I've been following the science of, if you're familiar with the double slit experiment in quantum physics, it's been called the most elegant experiment in all of science. And last year, 2019, a joint study between the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, and University of Vienna, Austria, showed conclusively that two observers at the same place and same time absolutely see two different things, and that's a recognized fact. And that's coming to us thanks to quantum science.
But how does that quantify the Mandela effect?
That gives us a basis by which to recognize that we're not always going to see the same thing, even if we are at the same place and same time.
That's why certain people, when they go on paranormal investigations, some see spirits, others don't. Some people see UFOs, others don't.
Yes, exactly.
Because they're not tuned into the same frequency.
Well, the science experiment doesn't mention frequencies, but otherwise, I'd tend to agree with you.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Cynthia? We've got about a minute left.
Well, I'm working on a new book about the Mandela effect and its society, awakening from me to we. It's really more of a global consciousness. It looks to me like we're in a big global consciousness shift. Our next conference, if people are interested, it'll be happening in Connecticut, first weekend in June, and you can go to MandelaEffectConference.com and check it out.
Cynthia, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you. You're one heck of an advocate for the Mandela effect, and you bring a good argument to the table.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself, Cynthia. Exonation, our guest this hour has been Cynthia Sue Larson, and the website is www.realityshifters.com. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, send me an email. Do you think that the Mandela effect is real, or is it a condition caused by some outside source? Could it be an environmental effect? Cynthia brought up examples of what the Mandela effect are, and it didn't not take us very long to actually say, you know what, you're wrong. There are beaver with orange teeth. There are giraffes that may look as if they're eating meat, because giraffes enjoy chewing bones. And that you can check up in your good old Funkin' Wagnall. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from right here, the studios of the X-Zone Broadcast Network in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.